I'd like to take you back to 2011, perhaps a moment in time that you would like to forget. This was when you were the vice president of corporate communications for Netflix. It was then that CEO Reed Hastings has subsequently said that Netflix made the biggest mistake in the company's history. I'd like to read for you a short excerpt from his book, No Rules Rules. And this is what he wrote.
Go ahead and read it, Brad, for the audience, but I can assure you I've read
that. I'm sure it's a fascinating book. This is the excerpt. He wrote, in early 2011, we offered one service for $10 that was a combination of mailing DVDs and streaming. But it was clear that streaming video would become of increasing importance while people would watch fewer and fewer DVDs. We wanted to be able to focus on streaming without DVDs distracting us. So I had the idea, I being Reed Hastings, I had the idea to separate the two operations. Netflix would stream while we created a new company, Quickster, to handle the DVD market. With two separate companies, we would charge $8 for each service separately. For customers who wanted both DVDs and streaming, it meant a price hike to $16. I remember that moment. I think on our late defunct blog, we wrote about that at the time. There was huge consumer backlash, a lot of media backlash. Just in general terms, what do you remember about that time?
Well, first, I'm going to say that I think Reed Hastings is a brilliant visionary. I don't think he gets the credit in the media that he should. You know, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, others get the credit for being brilliant visionaries. I think Reed Hastings is right up there. Reed was absolutely right. The DVD business was on its way to decline, ultimately to be obsolete. It's not obsolete yet, but it certainly has declined in the past decade. Streaming was the future. He saw that. He knew it. And we had two individual unique products, a DVD that went into a mailer and was sent to you via the United States Postal Service, and then push play on your electronic device, TV, laptop, iPad, whatever, and watch instantly. That's two entirely different businesses. And Reed had the right idea that they need to be run separately. Unfortunately, being a brilliant visionary, he was way ahead of his time, and it was all too soon for the consumer, especially in that economy. What we essentially did was slap our consumers and say, you have this choice of splitting or nothing. And we didn't give the option to do either. And of course, we reversed and came back to providing both services for a while. And ultimately, the DVD business was spun out and runs as, I think, DVD.com now, and Netflix is all streaming. So 10 years later, 12 years later, Reed's proved right. Unfortunately, it was a marketing error that we did it too quickly, and it insulted a lot of our consumers. We lost about 800,000 subscribers on a base of about 20 million. And that's a big chunk. The market value of the company crashed about 70% in 3 months. It was a catastrophic time for Netflix. But because Reed's an honorable guy and a very thoroughly decent guy, he said, we made a mistake. I made a mistake. He owned it. And we rebuilt the company. And the company has done extraordinarily well ever since.
He said in his book that one of the things that happened after that announcement was that dozens of people who worked for Netflix at the time came to him and said, you know, we had doubts about this. And they hadn't expressed them for a variety of reasons. Some just said, Reed, you seem so excited about it. We didn't want to get in the way. And he realized he needed to make changes in his management style so people didn't fear coming forward and talking to him. What did you take away from all of that? And especially in your role as the head of corporate communications back then, what did you need to do to right the ship internally to make sure that employees and other executives felt comfortable speaking their minds?
Well, I will say that a lot of folks did speak up before the decision was made. It wasn't afterwards. There was a lot of afterthought, of course, but there was robust discussion in anticipation of making this change. This was not done overnight. This was a very, very thought out, considered strategy. And when you have a dynamic leader who is brilliant and visionary and honorable and trustworthy, who everything he touches turns to gold, you go along. This one case, and it was not this one only, there were a couple other things in that time period where we made decisions that were too rushed for the consumer. And some of us were saying so, but because everything Reed touched turned to gold, mind you, he was on the cover of Fortune magazine as Business Person of the Year in December 2010. So this was a guy who was just very progressive and very successful in making a company that had never been made before. There's no textbook on the shelf that you pull down and say, how do you make a DVD by mail company that becomes a streaming company? Reed wrote that textbook, and it's in his book. But there were those of us who were saying, wait a minute, this is too soon. But because prevailing wisdom was, okay, we finally all go along and you execute, and you do the video and you try to promote it, and then you get the backlash. And so that was a very, I think, eye-opening moment for Reed. To answer your question about how did the company regroup, it started with Reed. He fessed up to his management team and to the whole company, and then ultimately to consumers, that this was a mistake, and here's how we're going to make it right. And in the last 10 years, the last decade, I think he's been well exonerated, and the company has received tremendous growth because of his leadership.
Thanks for watching this video clip of the Speak Good podcast. If you'd like to hear the complete episode, please check out your favorite podcast directory and subscribe now. Thanks for watching.